There's an animal sleeping in your house right now that used to be your species' worst nightmare. 40,000 years ago, it hunted the same food you did. It moved faster than you. It saw better in the dark than you. And it did not care if you lived to see morning. Today, it sleeps on your bed, waits by the door when you're 5 minutes late, and would die defending a total stranger's baby if that baby happened to be yours. That animal didn't get tamed. It made a bet on us. Before we built a single city, before we planted a single crop, before we'd even won the fight for survival ourselves. And that bet might be the single most important decision in human history. Here's the true story of how a predator became the reason your species is still here. Strip away everything you think you know about cavemen. No campfire cliché. Picture this instead. You're a mid-sized primate with bad night vision, a wooden spear, and no walls. You're sleeping on open ground in an ice age that's actively trying to kill you, and you are not the biggest thing in that darkness. Not close. Cave lions bigger than modern African lions, cave hyenas that hunted in packs, cave bears the size of a Clydesdale horse, every single one of them faster, stronger, and better adapted to that world than you were. And you weren't even the only humans there. Neanderthals had already been living in Europe for 200,000 years before we showed up. They weren't the grunting cartoon version. They controlled fire, made tools, buried their dead with what looks like ritual and grief. They had thicker bones and denser muscle built for cold that would put a modern human in the hospital. By every physical measure that should matter, Neanderthals should have won. They didn't. They're gone. Every single one. We're still here. And the real answer for why starts with an animal we never asked for help. No one sat down 40,000 years ago and said, let's domesticate a predator. It wasn't a decision. It was a slow accident that neither species saw coming. Some wolves were just bolder than others, less afraid of humans, willing to hang near the edges of camps for scraps. Those wolves ate better, they survived more winters, they had more pups, and their pups inherited that same lower fear response. Run that loop for 10,000 years, and you don't get a tame wolf. You get something that had never existed on Earth before, an animal built without any blueprint specifically to live alongside us. Here's the detail that should stop you cold. Dogs were domesticated over 10,000 years before any other animal on the planet, before the goat, before the cow, before farming even existed as an idea. This didn't happen because life got comfortable. It happened because life was as brutal as it's ever been for our species, and something had to change, or we didn't make it. Most people think dog domestication meant helped guard the cave. That's the kids' version. The real story is stranger and much bigger. Across Ice Age Europe, archaeologists have found mammoth kill sites holding the remains of dozens of animals. Some sites over 100 individual mammoths, with human shelters literally built from their bones. Now do the math on that. A mammoth is a 4-ton wall of muscle and tusk. One human, one spear. Those are terrible odds. But a team of humans working with large dogs, that's not a fight anymore. That's a strategy. Dogs tracked the animal by scent across miles of terrain no human nose could follow. They surrounded it, held it in place with noise and pressure, kept it from bolting while the hunters closed in for the kill. Two species, two completely different skill sets, one outcome that neither could have pulled off alone. And the timeline of those mammoth graveyards lines up almost exactly when dogs enter the archaeological record. That's not a coincidence. That's an equation. More successful hunts equals more food, equals stronger adults, equals more children who survive to adulthood, equals a population that compounds every generation. The dog didn't just help with one hunt. It rewrote the math of human survival permanently. The hunting story is half the picture. The other half happened after dark. Humans are functionally useless at night. No night vision worth mentioning, average hearing, a sense of smell that's a joke compared to almost anything else in that ecosystem. Dogs closed every single one of those gaps. A predator can't approach a camp with dogs and stay quiet about it. It gets announced. The camp wakes up ready, or the attack never happens at all.
Do that for 10,000 nights in a row, and the survival math shifts completely. Picture two groups living in the exact same landscape, same prey, same predators, same freezing nights. One group wakes up every morning a little better rested, a little better fed, a little less likely to have lost someone overnight. The other doesn't. That gap looks small on day one. Over 100 years, it's decisive. Over 1,000, it's everything. Neanderthals never domesticated a single animal, not one. They faced every one of those nights the same way they always had. Fire, tools, raw experience, and nothing else standing between them and the dark. Homo sapiens showed up with something that had never existed before, a cross-species alliance with a cross-predator, bigger hunting range, higher success rate, and full coverage during the exact hours human senses failed the hardest. Neanderthals were bigger, stronger, and had a 200,000-year head start. It wasn't enough. We had a partner. They didn't. 10,000 years after modern humans reached Europe, the Neanderthals were gone, and we weren't. Every other animal we ever domesticated gave us something physical. Goats gave milk, cows gave labor, horses gave speed. The dog gave us something no animal has given us before or since. It evolved to understand us. Point at something across the room. Your dog looks at the object, not your hand. A chimpanzee, our closest genetic relative on Earth, looks at your finger and gets confused. Dogs get it instantly, as puppies, with zero training. Nobody taught them that. They evolved a biological sensitivity to human communication that exists nowhere else in nature. Brain scans back this up. Dogs have dedicated auditory regions that respond to human voices, structurally similar to our own. A laugh, a sob, an angry shout, a dog's brain lights up the same emotional circuitry ours does. In one study, dogs exposed to sweat from frightened people became measurably stressed themselves. Exposed to sweat from calm people, they stayed calm. They were reading human fear chemistry before we'd even consciously registered it ourselves. For an ancient human sleeping in the dark, that's not a cute trick. That's an early warning system, sleeping 3 feet away. And then there's the part that separates dogs from every other domesticated animal on Earth. Eye contact with your dog triggers an oxytocin surge in both of you, the same bonding hormone released between a parent and a newborn. Hand-raised wolves, even ones raised from birth by humans, don't produce that response. It's unique to dogs. They evolved it specifically to bond to us. This is why at burial sites over 15,000 years old, archaeologists have found dogs buried beside humans, wearing collars, positioned with care, treated in death exactly the way the humans around them were treated. These weren't tools people got attached to. These were family, and that's been true for 15,000 years. The dog was there before the farm, before the city, before the written word, before every crop we ever planted and every wall we ever built. It was there when we had nothing, when we were just a mid-sized primate with a spear, trying to outlast a planet that hadn't decided we deserved to make it. And it stayed anyway. 40,000 years later, its descendants are asleep at the foot of your bed right now. If you think that's just a nice story, you're missing the real one. Without that animal, there's a real chance our species doesn't spread the way it did, and civilization doesn't get built the way it did. Everything you have today is downstream of a wolf that looked at us one night by a fire and made a different call than anyone could have predicted. That's the whole story. It might be the most important one we have.